incident of Fatah Makkah. I just want to remind myself and you that because I have to go through the whole portion, I'm trying to be brief, but each of these things in the seerah, there is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of understanding that is in every single incident. So each one of them, and something like Fatah Makkah, we can spend days on it, discussing each individual aspect of it, why Rasulullah did something, what is the lesson for us, and so on and so forth. So I want to leave that as a marker for you to do this in your own time, inshallah. Now, in the time of Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan radiallahu anhu, one of the Tabi'un wanted to invite Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu to his home for a meal. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was famous. He was very generous. He used to invite people all the time. And this Tabi decided that he wanted to do that. So he invited a lot of friends, and Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was the chief guest. So he went and invited him. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, Sabaqtani. He said, you beat me to it. I wanted to invite you first. And then he accepted. When he came in the evening for the meal, he said, shall I not tell you, O Ansar, a hadith that belongs to you? So of course they were delighted, and one of the reasons of inviting Abu Hurairah was to hear hadith from him directly. So they said, yes, please. He said, when Rasulullah came to Makkah, Zubair bin Awam anhu was commanding one wing, Khalid bin Walid the other, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah commanded the foot soldiers. Rasulullah was in his battalion. He saw me and said, oh Abu Hurairah, call the Ansar to me, and nobody but the Ansar should come to me. So I called Al Ansar, and they surrounded Rasulullah from every direction. Rasulullah said to them, whoever enters the house of Abu Sufyan is safe. Whoever enters his own house is safe. And then he said, did you say that I will leave you and stay in Makkah? The Ansar said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. They had a fear that, now that he's got his hometown back, that he will not go back to Medina, he will remain in Makkah. So they said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. Rasulullah said, I am a slave of Allah. I made hijrah to Allah and to you. My life is with you and my death is with you. Now they came crying, they started weeping with joy, and they came crying to him, and they said, we only said this because we love Allah and His Rasul. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah and His Messenger Rasul bear witness that you speak the truth. The position of the Ansar is amazing. It's a very, very special position. They loved Rasulullah and Rasulullah loved them, and he gave them a very special status which is not given to anyone else. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put the love of Ansar in our hearts and the love of Rasulullah and his own love Jalla Jalaluhu. The final hadith in Fatah Makkah, Amr bin Salama radiallahu anhu lived outside Makkah. He said, whenever we met any travelers, we would ask about Muhammad sallallahu about this man sallallahu. They would tell us what was revealed to him. He says, I was a child and I would memorize these ayat, and they, as if they would stay inside my breast, and they would stay inside my breast. Imagine this little boy, he would hear the ayat one time and he would memorize it. The Arabs were waiting, he continues, he said the Arabs were waiting for the conquest to become Muslim before they becoming Muslim. They were waiting to see the result between the Quraysh and Rasulullah. And that's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave people who accepted Islam before Fatah Makkah a higher status than those who accepted Islam after Fatah Makkah, because the truthfulness and the value of accepting Islam only because Islam is the truth, as compared to accepting Islam because now Islam has power. We are not saying the others are not truthful, but the point is that with them, when people accepted Islam after Fatah Makkah, there was no threat involved. That was the power, that was the land, that was the rule, and so you became Muslim. But those who became Muslim before Fatah Makkah, they faced all kinds of difficulties and all kinds of trials and tribulations because they had no power. So the general Arabs, they said, if he loses, then leave him. And leave him and his people alone. But if he wins, then he is the true prophet. Now that's a wrong way to think, because winning or losing has nothing to do with the truthfulness of the message. Nuh alayhi salam in 950 years was able to convince only 100 something people. So what do you say? He lost 21. Guidance is, the truth is the truth, even if nobody believes it. And falsehood is falsehood, even if the whole world believes it. And today we are living in a world which is based on falsehood. So that's the wrong way to think, but most people think and they only follow those with temporal power and authority. And that's also one of the reasons why Muslims should be wealthy and they should be powerful, because this is one way of giving dawah. When Muhammad ﷺ opened Makkah, all the tribes were rushing to embrace Islam. So Amr bin Salama says, my father went to meet Rasulullah and accepted Islam and returned to his tribe and told them, truly he is the Prophet and he has told us to pray this salah at this time and this salah at that time. So he got some instructions on how to pray. He said, when it is time to pray, one of you call the adhan and then have the one who knows the most Quran to be your imam. So they searched and they found that I was the one who knew the most Quran, thanks to what I learned from the travelers. So I used to lead them in salah. He said, I was 6 or 7 years old at the time. Now, for the purpose of our understanding, it is not permissible to have a 6 or 7 year old leading salah. In this case, it was permissible because he was the only one. He said, I had a burda, I had a thobe that was very short, and it had holes and stuff, and when I bent forward, it would rise and my behind would be exposed. So one day, one of the older women, she stood up and she said, why don't you cover the behind of your reciter from us? So they bought a new thobe for me, and he said, nothing made me happier than that thobe. This is a little boy and he is feeling so happy that he was able to get some new clothes thanks to the objection of this lady, of this auntie. We come now with that the end of the hadith related to and story related to Fatah Makkah. Now, with the opening of Makkah, the strongest resistance to the da'wah of Islam ended. However, there was another tribe, the Banu Saqif, and we know this tribe from the incident of Rasulullah ﷺ, his journey to Taif and all that they did to him. So this was the same tribe. They were a branch of Al-Hawazim, and Al-Hawazim was a big tribe all around Hijaz, and they considered themselves to be superior, as did the Quraysh. Taif also had this evil history with respect to Rasulullah ﷺ when he went to them with his message. Malik bin Auf al-Nasri, their leader, mobilized the Hawazim and they put together an army to attack Rasulullah ﷺ. When Rasulullah ﷺ heard about this, he marched to Taif with his army, which was 12,000. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and probably some others. So now this army happened. Malik bin Auf al-Nasri came out with all his fighters, and they also brought out their women and children and livestock and wealth, because they thought that this would prevent the men from running away. So this was one of the customs of the time. They brought their women and so on. They said the men would fight better if they are actually actively defending their women folk instead of having the women folk staying somewhere else. Durayd bin Thimma was a famous poet and an old warrior. He was with them. He was very old and blind, but was highly respected for his wisdom and poetry. He asked, where are we? They told him, we are in Al-Awtas. He said, a fine place for cavalry, not rocky and not soft with sand. Then he asked, why is it that I hear the grunting of camels and the bleating of sheep and the braying of donkeys and crying of children? They told him, Malik has brought everyone and all our wealth with him so that the men will not run away. He called Malik and he said, Yeah, Malik, this day has great consequences for the time coming after it. This day will determine our future. Why did you do what you have done? Malik said, I brought them so that everyone will fight for his family and his wealth. Durayd bin Simma said, You sheep grazer, will anything ever turn around someone in retreat? He said, if the battle is to go well, only men with swords and lances will do you good. If it goes badly, you will be disgraced with regard to your family and wealth anyway. And then he asked them, what did Ka'ab and Kulab, the two major tribes of the time, he said, what did they do? Malik said, they did not come with us. Durayd bin Simma said, then skill and courage are absent. If it was to be a day of great deeds, they would not have missed it. I wish you had done the same. Meaning, I wish you had also not come out. Then he asked him, who is with you? Malik said, Amr bin Amr and Auf bin Amr, the two other clans. Durayd bin Simma said, those two will do neither good nor harm. Then he said, Ya Malik, take away the families and cattle to the highlands, to the fortified lands of Hawazin, and then meet the Subah, which is the name that they called Muslims, on horseback. If the battle is for you, then the rest will come. If it is against you, then you have at least protected your family and wealth. Malik said, Wallahi, I am not going to do what you tell me. You are an old man and your knowledge has become old. O Hawazim, when you see the enemy break your sheaths, of the swords, and attack them as one man. If you don't come with me, then I will fall on my sword and kill myself. Durayd said, this is a day that I am not counted as part of it. And he said, I am not responsible for the consequences of this day. This is the problem that people don't want to listen to advice because their mind is already made up and the advice being given is the opposite. So they disregard. Now the person giving the advice is a person of experience. He has knowledge. He is concerned about them. So they should listen to his advice. But he decided not to. Rasulullah sent Abdullah bin Abi Hadra to gather intelligence for him. He returned and reported what he saw. Umar ibn al-Khattab refused to believe it. So Abdullah bin Abi Hadra said, you may be rejecting the truth. Rasulullah wanted extra arms, so he asked Safwan bin Umayyah if he would give him some weapons. Safwan asked him, are you taking them by force or are you borrowing them? Rasulullah said, no, I am borrowing them and will return them to you. Safwan was still in the waiting period because he had been given 4 months to decide whether he wanted to become Muslim or not. After the battle, some of the pieces were lost. So Rasulullah told him, I will compensate you for the pieces that are lost. Safwan said, no, don't do that because I now find in my heart what was not there before, and he accepted Islam. On the way, the Muslims passed by a large tree on which soldiers used to hang their swords for barakah. Some of the new Muslims, At-Tulaqa, they asked Rasulullah, they said, Ya Rasulullah, we want to have that anwat, like the mushrikeen have anwat. So the anwat is some kind of a sign or symbol. And this is the whole root of idol worship. Rasulullah said, by Allah who has my soul in his hand, you have said what the Bani Israel said to Musa. We want to have a God as the mushrikeen have gods. You will follow the disbelievers one by one in everything that they did. Meaning the Muslims will follow the Bani Israel in all the evil that they used to do. And wallahi, if you see how true that is. Rasulullah therefore refused to do that. He said, I will not give you any such anwa or any such signs or symbols. Rasulullah said, who will guard us this night? Anas bin Abi Marsad volunteered. Rasulullah said to him, mount up, face this valley until you reach to the end of it, meaning go down this valley to the end. We don't want to be taken by surprise on your side. And this is the duty of every Muslim, to protect Islam from their side. In the morning, Rasulullah went to the Musalla, prayed 2 rakat, and then asked the people, did you see your night? Meaning, did you see Anas bin Abi Marsad? They said, no, Ya Rasulullah. Then he started Salatul Fajr. As he was praying, he kept looking in the direction of the valley, and when he finished Salah, he said, good news, your night is coming. The Sahaba still could not see him, and Rasulullah saw him before anyone else. He came and made salam, and then he said, I was at the place where you sent me, Ya Rasulullah, in the morning. I looked down from between the 2 mountains, but saw that there was nobody there. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked him, did you dismount? He replied, no, Ya Rasulullah, except for salah and to answer the call of nature. Rasulullah said, Allah will give you Jannah, and you have to do nothing more after this. So Anas bin Abi Marsad was given the Bashara of Jannah for guarding the Muslims, and he was told that he was not required to do any more good deeds in order to earn Jannah. That one night of guarding was enough. Subhanallah. It was a very hot day. Shadidul Har. Rasulullah called Bilal radiallahu, who stood up from under a tree which had a shade like that of a bird. They started to march, and they came to a valley, and suddenly they were attacked by the horsemen of the Hawazim from the front, and the archers of the Hawazim attacked them from the sides. The Hawazim were good archers, and the arrows fell thick and had a devastating effect. The Muslims were ambushed and taken by surprise. In the front of the Muslim army was Banu Sulaim, a tribe which lived near Medina, who couldn't withstand the cavalry attack and started to retreat. Behind them were Tulaqa, the new Muslims from Makkah. They also had no battle experience, so they also turned and retreated. They were about 2,000, and as they ran, the camels stumbled on each other. There was chaos, because it became a lie. It's not a properly executed retreat with like a rout. So there was chaos. Rasulullah tried to call them back. He said, where are our people? Where are people? Where are you going? Come to me. I am Rasulullah. I am Muhammad bin Abdullah. Come to me. Jabir bin Abdullah, anhu, the narrator of the hadith, he said, but nobody turned. Abu Sufyan, when he saw them, he said, the defeat will not end. This retreat and this rout will not end until they reach the sea. He said, this will not end until they reach the sea. Khalda bin al-Hambal, he said, the magic is gone, meaning that the magic of Rasulullah is over. Safwan was not happy with what he heard, and he said, I'd rather have a man from Quraysh rule over me than a Bedouin. Not the best intention, but better than what others were saying. Salama bin Aqwa, who was an excellent runner, and he was the one who ran in Khaybar and caught 2 sheep. He said I ran like an ostrich. He says, when the retreat started, I was fleeing. I passed next to Rasulullah, and when he saw me, he said, Ibn Aqwa has seen something terrifying. So even, good people who are not munafiqeen or something, this happened to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Quran. Allah said, ثُمَّ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ وَعَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَأَنزَلَ جُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا وَعَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah said, then Allah did send down His sakina, His calmness, tranquility on the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ and on the believers, and sent down forces, that is angels, that you could not see, and punished the disbelievers, and such is the recompense of the disbelievers. In one narration it says, we saw a black cloud coming out of the sky, and when it landed on the ground, we saw a carpet of black ants. We saw that these were angels, and Allah knows truly the truth about His forces. Allah knows what His army consists of. Initially, only Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, Abu Sufyan, Ibn al-Harith, one of the sons of Abbas, a son of Ayman, were with Rasulullah surrounding him and holding his mule. Everyone else had retreated. At this time, Rasulullah asked Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib to call the Ansar and to call Al-Khazraj. The narrator says they turned like cows turn to their calves. They surrounded Rasulullah. There were about 100 of them facing the army of Al-Hawazim, which was about 20,000. Rasulullah was marching ahead alone. There was a man ahead of the Hawazim who had a very long lance with a banner. This part of the army was forcing the Muslims back. Now, when Rasulullah reached them with 100 people, 100 fighters, the real fighting started. Rasulullah said, now the fire of battle is waging. Rasulullah stood in his stirrups and made dua. Then he took a handful of dirt, of soil, and he threw it at the enemy. Every enemy had something in their eyes, and there was a feeling in their hearts of fear. One of them, who later accepted Islam, when asked how they felt at that moment, took a handful of stones and threw them into a metal pan with a great clatter. He said, this is how we felt in our hearts when Rasulullah threw the soil. In Musnad Imam Ahmad, he quotes Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who says, I was with Rasulullah in the battle of Hunayn. There were about 80 Ansar and Muhajirun who remained with him. We withdrew about 80 feet but did not turn our backs to the enemy. These were the men upon whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his Sakina. Meanwhile, Rasulullah was still going forward. His mule veered to one side so that he slipped off his saddle. I called out to him, up you get, and may Allah raise you up. He told me, get me a handful of dirt, a handful of soil. With this, he struck them in their faces and filled their mouths. Then he asked me, where are the Muhajirun and the Ansar? And I said, they are close by. He said, call for them. I did, and they came with their swords in their right hands, shining like stars. And the Mushrikeen turned their backs in retreat. Now, some of the events in the Battle of Hunayn, Rasulullah said, whoever kills an enemy gets his possessions. So Abu Qatada says that there was one of the Mushrikeen who raised his hand to strike a Muslim. So I struck him and my sword dug deep into his shoulder. The man turned and embraced me so hard that I felt death. Then he fell down dead. Then the retreat started. I saw Umar ibn al-Khattab and asked him what was happening. He said, this is a decree of Allah. When Rasulullah made the announcement about the Ghanima, Abu Qatada tried to find someone to witness for him, someone who had seen him kill the man. But nobody would give witness. Finally, one man from the Quraysh stood up and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I took the possessions of that man, so please ask Abu Qatada to allow me to keep them. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu intervened and he said, by Allah, no. We will not allow a lion from among the lions of Allah to have nothing and give it to a hyena of the Quraysh. Rasulullah said, give them, and gave them to Abu Qatada. He said, I took those possessions and sold them, and with the money I bought a small garden of date palms, and that was the first wealth that I owned in Islam. Abu Talha, his wife, saw his wife, Sulaim, radiallahu anhu, carrying a dagger. He asked her, what is this? She said, I will rip open the belly of any enemy who comes near me. Then she said to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, kill all the Tulaqa. It is because of them that we suffered defeat. Rasulullah said, no need for that. Allah has been good to us and given us victory. Then Rasulullah saw people gathered around something. He said, what is that? They said, it's a woman killed by Khalid bin Walid. Rasulullah said, this woman is not a combatant. And then he gave orders to Khalid bin Walid not to kill women and laborers and children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayat about Hunayn. It's a very important part of the seerah and of Islam, and something which we need to understand and learn from. Allah said, لَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَوَاطِنَ كَثِيرَةٍ وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ فَلَمْ تُغْنِ عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ ثُمَّ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ وَعَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَأَنزَلَ جُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا وَعَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah said, truly Allah has given you victory on many battlefields, and on the day of Hunain, when you rejoiced at your great number, but it availed you nothing, and the earth, vast as it is, was straitened for you. Then you turned back in flight. Then Allah did send down His Sakina, His calmness and tranquility on the Messenger Muhammad and on the believers, and sent down forces which you could not see, and punished the disbelievers, and such is the recompense of the disbelievers. The Hawazin were defeated by a core group of Muslims, between 80 and 100, and they were a core group among them who never moved back at all and only moved forward. These were the people who defeated the Hawazin. Malik bin Auf and the main army retreated to Taif and closed the gates. A smaller group went to Al-Awtas. Rasulullah split his army and led the main army to Taif himself, and sent Abu Amr al-Ashari, the uncle of Abu Musa al-Ashari, in charge of a smaller force to deal with the Hawazin at Al-Awtas. Abu Amr radiallahu anhu was shot in the knee. Abu Musa al-Ashari asked him who shot him. Abu Amr pointed to the man. Abu Musa chased the man, but the man was running away, so Abu Musa shouted to him, "Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you going to stop and fight? Aren't you an Arab man?" When the man heard this, he stopped and came to fight. Abu Musa killed him. Then he returned to his uncle and told him that he had killed the man. Abu Amr then told him to remove the arrow. In that process, one of the arteries in his knee got cut, and he started losing blood rapidly, and he knew that he was dying. He said to Abu Musa al-Ashari, "Give my salams to Rasulullah and ask him to ask forgiveness for me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Abu Musa radiallahu anhu, after his uncle passed away, he went to Rasulullah and told him the story. Rasulullah was sleeping on a bed. He was lying down on a bed made from ropes, made from date palms. Abu Musa radiallahu anhu said, "I could see the marks of the ropes on his side and back." When he got up, Abu Musa radiallahu anhu told him the story. Rasulullah asked for some water and made wudu. Then he raised his hands until Abu Musa said, "I could see his armpits." He raised his hand high above his head. And this means that he was deeply involved in the dua. He said, "O Allah, forgive this slave of yours, Abu Amr, and on the day of judgment make him above many of your creation." Abu Musa radiallahu anhu al-Ashari heard this dua, and he said to Rasulullah, "Ya Rasulullah, please make the dua for me." Rasulullah said, "O Allah, forgive Abdullah bin Khais and give him a noble admittance on the day of judgment." Abu Burda radiallahu anhu said, one dua was made for Abu Amr and another for Abu Musa. A Bedouin made this dua. He said, "O Allah, make the best of my life the end of it, and make the best of my deeds the last of them, and make the best day of my life the day I will meet you." This is a wonderful dua, because the one for whom the day of judgment is best is a successful person. The Ghazwat al-Taif is a very important part of the seerah, and it is something to think about and reflect on, because here was a situation where for the first time the Muslims had adequate weapons, and they had they had enough weapons, and they had enough material, and they had a large army. But 12,000 people were never in. Even in Fatah Makkah they were 10,000, and then they were 12 here because the Tulakha got added from the Fatah Makkah. And it was in the hearts of some of the believers that this time we cannot lose because we are so many. And they felt that we are so many, so there's no way we can lose. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was showing that Muslims, Allah does not give Muslims victory based on their numbers, or based on their resources, or based on their wealth, or based on their, based on anything other than their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than their piety. It's very important to remember this, because many times we get carried away. If you ask somebody, what are the assets that we have? For example, Muslims feel today very left out and so on, where they feel very persecuted, they feel very helpless. But if you think about that, why do we say that? Why do you feel that? Because if you ask average Muslims, sometimes I ask this question to some of my Muslim clients. I tell them, do a SWOT analysis, write down your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat. When they finish that, I ask them, where is Allah in this? Where is Islam in this? You've written your strengths, you've written your weaknesses, opportunities, threats. In your strengths, there's no mention of Islam, there's no mention of Allah. Why? Right? Isn't Islam an asset of yours? Isn't that a strength? Should it not be a strength? Should Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not be our only strength? And the one who has Allah, if he loses everything else in life, what has he lost? Whereas with the one who does not have Allah, if he gains everything in life, what has he gained? Now this is the difference between us and the Sahaba, among the many other differences. Where the Sahaba, if you had asked them to do a SWOT analysis, what do you think they would have written in the section of strengths? For them, Allah was everything. For them, Islam was everything. And because they believed in Islam, they followed Islam completely, and they got the full benefit of Islam. Just ask yourself, what is the value, for example, of dua which is maqbool? Dua which is accepted. There's no ifs and buts about this dua. You ask, Allah will give you. What's the value of that? Something beyond value, right? But how do you get there? You get there by being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no shortcut to this. The Sahaba were completely and totally obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah accepted their dua. In the case of Hunayn, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning this very clearly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Allah gave you victory on many battlefields, and on the day of Hunayn, you rejoiced at your great number, but it availed you nothing. It availed you nothing on the earth. Vast as it was, the earth became constricted and straitened for you, and you ran. Now, leaving the battlefield is one of the worst sins that you can commit, right? But that happened. I mean, just fear, terror. They ran away. Whereas, if you look at Badr, for example, they had nothing. They were ill-equipped. They were few in number, but they had iman. They had taqwa, and so they stayed. There's no retreat in Badr. They stayed, and Allah gave them victory. In this case, Allah gave victory because Rasulullah remained steadfast. And the few Sahaba who were with him, 80 to 100, that's it. And these were the Ansar. They remained steadfast. And because of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to everyone. But Allah is saying very clearly that you ran away, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned the tide of the battle against you. So I remind myself and you that one of the big lessons to learn from the Ghazwat al-Taif is the fact that firmness and strength comes from Allah alone, not from the world. So don't seek it there, don't seek it in the world, because the world doesn't have it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has it. And we look for it from Allah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give it to us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to live a life which is true to Him, Jalla Jalaluhu, and to save us from anything which goes against that. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا رب العالمين. At us.